Alright, so in this video, I want to talk about the pros and cons around using Bootstrap. It isn't some miraculous cure-all that you should always use on every website, but it can be extremely useful. But it doesn't come without drawbacks, so I want to talk about those in this video. But first, let's talk about why people like it. Up front, it makes things very quick. You can make websites much faster than you could without Bootstrap, assuming that you are doing things that Bootstrap excels at. If you're trying to make a video game in the browser, then Bootstrap's not really going to help you. But if you're trying to make a traditional website, it can speed things up immensely, especially if you're a small team or just a single person. It also supports all browsers, or almost all browsers. It doesn't go, Bootstrap 4, for example, doesn't support super old versions of browsers, but it makes it very easy. You type a single class name into an element, and the CSS behind it might actually be doing 3 or 4 different things on each browser, because often these properties around layout and Flexbox, they still have different names for different browsers. Not everything is unified yet, so this makes it much easier. You don't have to worry about it. Bootstrap takes care of it for you. It makes things work across browsers. Another pro is that it helps make responsive layouts much easier. So it's all tied together. Browser compatibility, faster development. When you make responsive websites and you don't use Bootstrap, it's definitely doable. Lots of places do it. Lots of people do it. It just takes longer. It's a little more tedious. And browser support often becomes an issue. You have to write a lot of CSS to do something that you can accomplish with one single word, one character of Bootstrap. Well, not one character, one class name often will spawn, it will correspond to 5 or 10 different lines of CSS behind the scenes. So it just makes it a lot faster and a lot easier to make these fluid, responsive websites that look great on iPhones and Android devices, on tablets, and also on extra large, huge displays at home. So those are the main reasons why people like Bootstrap. It's also just a comfortable thing to have, to come back to when you're making a website. It provides structure. It takes away a lot of the uncertainties of starting a new project. Oh, I forgot. It can be fun. I think it can be fun. It's relatively painless. But now let's talk about some of the cons, the downsides of Bootstrap. And one thing that comes up a lot is that people think, or they ask about Bootstrap websites all looking the same. If you're using the same nav bars, the same button components, aren't your websites going to look identical? And the answer is they can, absolutely, but also no, because usually if you're making something, you're going to customize things. You're going to make things that actually look different. So let me just show you some examples. Here are some, they're not really real websites. These are examples from Bootstrap. Nothing has been customized. It's just different combinations of elements, different components. So we have a nav bar. We have a blue button and a gray button. We have, these little cards, some blue text, a little footer that's that's white, and this light gray background. Then here's another example. What do you know? The same font, the same colors, the same blue. We have a different nav bar this time, but still the same font everywhere else. And here's another one, same button color. This nav bar is the same as the first one, the same color, same fonts, blah, blah, blah. Hopefully you can see where I'm going here. All of this does look the same if you're not changing things. If you're using it out of the box, it still can help you make something quickly, prototype something, maybe like an internal tool, something that's not going to see the light of day or the rest of the world. But now here are examples that all use Bootstrap. However, they change things, they customize things. Using Bootstrap doesn't mean you have to just leave it unchanged. Here's an example. Everything is different. You can't even tell it's using Bootstrap. Different fonts, different colors. Here's another example. For a restaurant web page, another Bootstrap navbar, totally different. Here's something made with Bootstrap. Here's another thing. This is all using Bootstrap to lay out the content, using the grid system, which we spend a lot of time on. The navbar, for example. There's a lot of stuff going on that is all attributed to Bootstrap, but things have been changed a lot. And finally, one more here. This one is kind of fun. This isn't just pure Bootstrap, of course. All of these require changing things, changing colors, fonts, adding in different icons. But the point is that you use Bootstrap as a tool, not as the only thing that you use to make a website. You use it in tandem with your own styles, your own CSS, which is what we're going to learn how to do in this course. But of course, we're going to start by making things that look more like this, which is fine. Again, it's good if you're trying to make something quickly. But then we'll move on and start making more complex layouts, changing colors, and customizing things. So to reiterate, the answer is yes, they can all look the same, but also they usually don't if you know what you're doing and if you're paying attention to make sure it doesn't look like a Bootstrap website. And another thing that people will say about Bootstrap, just like with any framework or library, is that if you don't need all of the pieces of it, if you're only using one tiny part of Bootstrap, then maybe it's not best to use it because it's a very long file, it includes a lot of components, and that's true of really any tool that you use. But now with Bootstrap, the way that it works, you can download all of the files, we'll talk about how to do this later on, and only include the components you want. So if you only want the nav bar or you only want the grid system and you don't want any of the other stuff, you can still do that. So it's more customizable, more flexible than ever. Anyway, I guess I'll leave off on this somewhat negative slide that just says no. Next up, we're going to talk about comparing Bootstrap 3 and 4, and then we're going to finally get set up and start writing code.